All right, let's get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending the talk today. My name is Jigar, and I have been working with Microsoft for more than 7 years now. Uh, for the major portion of my career here at Microsoft, I've worked in the Office Interoperability team. This is a team in the Office division that works on the protocol documents. We make sure that protocol documents are uploaded to MSDN on time and they are always kept up to date. So with the new releases of new products, we update the protocol documents. And we also work on tools related to Office file format standards. And we also work on test tools surrounding the protocols. So the protocol test suites is one of such projects that we have been working on from quite some time. Exchange. Today I'm going to talk about Exchange protocol test suites. As you have seen today, entire day, Exchange has a family of protocols. We have got test suites for two of such families, the RPC and EWS. The RPC stands for Remote Procedure Call. It's basically the remote operations protocols that they are kind of legacy protocols that they were developed from the day one, and Outlook on Windows uses this RPC protocols. Another is EWS, which stands for Exchange Web Services. You just saw the talk before me. The EWS protocols are used by Outlook for Mac. There's also another add-on to Thunderbird called Exquila that also uses EWS to communicate with Exchange. So let's talk about the test suite. So the objective of the talk is I wanted to explain what Exchange test suites are and why you may want to use them. I also want to tell you, also want to give you enough information to enable you with successful use of this test suite. So over here at the event and even afterwards, after you go back to your offices. At the same time, we also want to learn what tools you think we should develop in order to help you accelerate development against this Exchange protocols. So here's the agenda. First, we'll go through a very high-level test suite design. Then I will tell you how to use the test suites. I also have a short demo planned where we will take an environment, client, and server. We will use these test suites, deploy them, configure them, and then pick some test cases and run them. Then we will go into details about debugging. We'll see how to troubleshoot, what you would do in case if something goes wrong, some test case fails, what log files you can use. After that, we will go into a little bit of implementation details. The information in this section will help somebody who is going to modify these test suites to adjust them to their environment or their implementation. So in case if you have your own protocol implemented, then you can use the information in this section to modify the test suites. At the end, I have the Q&A, but in case if you have any question while I'm going through these slides, just feel free to raise your hand and we'll go through the question. So let's dive in. So so far we have seen through the different customer interaction, we have seen three major category of customers who like to use this protocol documents. The first category is people who are developing or implementing client application. Something similar to Microsoft Outlook, where you'll be having your own client application. In order to craft proper protocol messages, protocol request message, and in order to understand the response messages back from server, you will need to understand protocol nicely, and these protocol documents will help you with that. Another category is man in the middle. This is a very interesting category where users will have their own software or appliance in between client and server. goal is to intercept the packet or modify the packets in order to accelerate or optimize a particular scenario. So in order to do that also, you may need to go through the protocol documents. And the next is the users who are implementing their own server product. Even though you have your own implementation of the server, in case if you want to make sure that existing client application talk to your server in a good way, as good as they talk to Exchange, you'll need to implement these protocols. And protocol documents help you a lot with that. I just wanted to mention that test suites, that these test tools, help you more in these two scenarios, the man in the middle and server. For client, maybe you can use this test suites for code samples, but not for testing your client application, because the test suites themselves act as a client when you run them. All right, so here I want to give you some information about the process that we follow when we implement or develop the test suites. So even before we start developing the test suite, we need to have the open specification ready, right? So both product group and the user assistance team work together in order to come up with the open specification. Once we have the open specification ready, we start testing the document, the technical document. So it's very interesting. Very few companies that I know actually test the documentation. And we give a significant amount of resources and efforts to test the protocol document, and that's when we start developing the test suites. The way we do that is we start in a clean room environment. What I mean by that is the team that actually develops this test suites, this protocol test suites, they do not have access to the server source code. The server who is implementing this protocol, they do not have access to the source code. By doing that, we make sure that we are almost in the same situation that, as any other third party who is just going through the open specification and trying to figure out what it says. So at the end, we will end up with a synthetic client, which will just try to generate the protocol traffic and validate the responses sent back by the server. And once we have the test suites developed, we then deploy them internally against our own protocol implementation. In this case, it would be an Exchange server, and run them consistently with all the possible configuration multiple times in order to make sure that we have the consistent results. We also, at this time, we also work with other third parties like you in order to test our test suites with your product deployed. So at some point, we'll reach a state where we can release this test suites out to public, out to download center, and we have done that in the past for some of the test suites. So there is some more information about how we develop and develop the test suites. So what we start with is open specification review. At this time, we do accuracy and ambiguity review. Somebody will go through the open specification line by line and make sure that there is no ambiguous information in the open specification. We then start implementing the protocol on the client side and generate the test suite. So while developing the test suite, the first step is to go through the open specification, extract the statements with some special keywords. Andrew mentioned in his talk that our specification uses RFC 2119 to use this normative statements. The statements with keywords like must, may, and should are called normative statements, and we extract all those statements from the open specification, and we call them requirement. Then what we do is we go through each and every requirement and make sure that, and check if these requirements can be converted into test case. If it can be, then we will write the source code for those test cases. And that's how basically requirements become test case. And we also group similar kind of test cases into scenarios. Scenario is nothing but a logical grouping of similar kind of test cases. So as I said, a test suite is basically a collection of test cases, and also similar test cases are grouped into scenarios. They are basically derived from the open specification itself. And from the get-go, from the beginning, we designed these test suites with flexibility in mind. We design them in such a way that they are very easy to modify in case if you want to run them against your own implementation of the protocol. So in order to do that, we use something called adapters. A test suite may use two adapters, a protocol adapter and SUT control adapter. By the way, the SUT stands for system under test. That you can also call it a server. A protocol adapter is basically used to generate or consume messages, protocol messages. So it's very less likely to be replaced in case even if you have your own implementation of the protocol, because this protocol adapter is the core of the protocol itself. So even if you have your own implementation, hopefully you won't be changing the protocol. So you'll keep the protocol adapter as it is. Our implementation is done always in .NET language, C# for the protocol adapter. The SUT control adapter is basically used to query or configure the server when we are running the test case or test suite. In case if you have your own implementation of the protocol, you will end up replacing this SUT control adapter with your own code. It can be PowerShell scripts or it can be .NET code or anything. We'll see more about SUT control adapter later. But mostly our implementation of SUT control adapter is done in PowerShell because our products have very rich support for PowerShell. So here is an example, a real example of how you can relate what a test case does with what you can do with the product. So say for example, when you are using an Outlook for Windows and you are creating an attachment to the email. At that time, Outlook would use a ROP, a remote operation message mentioned over here. Similarly, we have a test case which is highlighted over here. This test case will use the same ROP request to create an attachment to the mail message. So as you can see, this test suite clients are acting as these test suites are acting as a client application when you run them. The good thing is you have the source code available for these test suites. So if you want, you can change modify the steps, and also in case if you have your own implementation for the protocol, you can easily modify them, and they are test suites, so of course they can be automated. Yeah. Yes. So I have a detailed example about yeah. So the question is, what is SUT? What is SUT adapter? I have detailed example about what is SUT adapter and in what cases we are using it. I also have the example in later slide. But they are basically when you are running the test cases, if you have to query or communicate with the server outside of the protocol that you are testing right now, outside of the scope of the particular protocol, then we use SUT adapter to communicate with the server. If it is within the protocol, then that code goes into the protocol adapter. So with the latest slide, I think you'll get better idea. So here are some of the here are the test suites that we have for RPC family of protocols. We have 10 test suites for RPC RPC package. In total, they cover more than close to 800 test cases. So as you can see, there are significant amount of test cases for RPC protocols. And this is for EWS. We have 9 test suites for EWS family of protocol. And for this one, we have close to 300 test cases for EWS. All right, so now I want to show you how to actually use this test suites. So in this section, we will go through the topology of the environment in which you can deploy and run these test suites. Then I'll go through. I'll move into the demo where I'll show you the folder structure, how the package is structured, what are the files, important files that you should go through in case if you want to run them. Then we'll go through the configuration. We'll configure some client and server and see how easy it is to configure the machines. And then we'll pick some test cases to and actually run them. So the topology is consists of two machines. So if you want to run any of the test suite, you will end up having two machines where one will act as a client machine, another will act as a server machine. The server machine also includes the Active Directory with it, and Exchange will be installed on that one. So that's the server machine. You can install either Exchange 2013, 2010, or 2007, or test suite can be run against any version of the Exchange server. On the client machine, we will require Visual Studio 2010 because these test suites are developed in 2010. We will also require something called Protocol Test Framework. This is a common library that's used by all our test suites, no matter what product family they are for. So even Windows test suites will use the same protocol test framework. This is basically providing some common functionalities, something like reading from the configuration file or writing to a log file. Some common plumbing code about adapters is into this library. So you will have access to this installation when you get the test suite package. Some of the test suites are following the model-based testing approach. So for those test suite, if you want to explore the model or maybe modify the model, in that case you will need this Pack Explorer installed. And in case if you want to do packet captures when the test cases are running, then you can use either Network Monitor and parsers or Message Analyzer. You can even use Wireshark if you want. Now, as I said, the test suites are very customizable. So in case if you have your own implementation of these protocols or you are creating your own server product, you can replace this SUT machine with your own server product. So same test suites can be run against some other server as well instead of Exchange server. All right, so next demo, we'll first look at the folder structure, then go through the configuration, both client and server, and then we'll execute some of the test cases. So let me move on. Let me go to the demo machine. All right, so here I have two machines. The one that starts with SUT is the server machine. The one that starts with client is the client machine. I have Exchange 2013 installed on this one. The client machine contains Visual Studio 2010 and the protocol test framework. So I have the prerequisites installed on them. So first, let's look at the folder structure. So when you get access to the test suites, they will be in the zip file. So we don't require any complex installation for the package. It's just an Xcopy deployment. So you get the zip file. On the root, there is a README which contains bare minimum instructions to just get you started. In case if you can't see, oops, sorry. So this is the README file, which contains just some small set of instructions to get you started. This is the end user license agreement, which I think you should just go through before trying the test suites. There is a root folder which talks about the name of the package. In this case, it is EWS package, so Exchange Server EWS Protocol Test Suite. There are 3 folders on the root. the docs folder, setup folder, and source folder. The docs folder contains the documentation, the supporting documentation for the test suite. The reference guide is a very comprehensive guide where it tells you how to install Exchange, how to install SharePoint in case if you're installing SharePoint protocol test suites. It contains step-by-step instruction along with the screenshots, so you don't get stuck anywhere and you can prepare the environment. The EWS test suite deployment guide, that's the document that will give you more information about what properties, what configuration file properties exist and what do they actually mean, how to set them, what are the options, and things like that. There are separate folders, one for each protocol in the package. Let's look into one of the folder. This is for ATT. That's the web service attachment protocol. That each of this protocol folder contains documentation specific to that particular protocol. We have a PDF over here. This is the same open specification that you can go ahead and download from MSDN, but we have just kept it in the package so you don't have to do that. We have an Excel file which contains the list of all the requirements that we have extracted from the open specification. So you can see what requirements are verified in the test suite. We have a docx file. This is basically the test design document for the test suite. So it will contain a very detailed information about what test cases exist, what are the scenarios that this particular test suite has, and even for each test case, it will have test steps listed, what test steps this particular test case executes. And so if you want to understand in detail what this test suite does, this is the great place to start. So that's the doc folder. Let's go through the setup folder. The setup folder contains scripts that you will need to run in order to configure your environment. It has two folders, SUT and client. The SUT folder contains the script that you'll need to run on the server. And the client folder contains the script that you'll need to run on the client machine. We'll just run them in a minute. The source folder contains the source code for all the test suites. So these are basically Visual Studio projects that you can open in Visual Studio and look at the source code. We have a common solution which if you open in Visual Studio will load all the test suites in the package. So in this case, if I open this one, it will load all 9 test suites that we have here. But we also provide you with an individual SLN file, the solution file, which will load just one particular test suite. So it's up to you which one you want to open, but you can basically, if you are running all the test suites together, then probably you are better opening if you open this one. If you are just running or testing one particular test suite, then open the individual SLN file. Another important folder over here is the common folder. This contains basically the common, basically it's a common project that's shared by all test suites. So we didn't want to duplicate code between the projects. So we put all the common code into this one. Things like proxy, the proxy for EWS is placed in this one. There is an important file over here, which is the configuration file for, it's a common configuration file which is used by all the test suites in the package. So properties which are common to all test suites goes into this one. So things like the name of the domain or SUT, the server name, the properties which are common to all test suites. So if you change a property over here, it will get affected, it will be picked up by all other test suites when you run them next. So I just wanted to tell you about that. Another important folder is scripts folder over here. We have heard from customers that they wanted to run this test suites in their lab without any manual interaction. So instead of asking them to write scripts themselves, we have started shipping the scripts along with the package. So these are basically batch files that you can run from command line to run all the test cases or test suite, basically. So if you run, so we have one parent batch file which will run all the test suites in entire package. We have individual batch files as well. I'm into ATT test suite folder over here, and I have run all ATT test case that will run all the test case in the ATT test suite. We also have individual test case command file. So if you just want to run this particular test case in your lab every now and then you can just automate on that one. So we have very fine granularity on what you want to run through command line. So you don't even have to load the Visual Studio in order to run this. You just fire it from the command prompt and it will run the test case. Yes, we have a question. Yes, so as I said, so the question is there a document where it mentions what each test case is doing? I showed in the docs folder we have a document, the test design specification. This is the document that will tell you what each and every test case does, including the step that it takes in order to do verification or whatever it does. So that's the document. If you want to understand the test suite, that's the document you should start with. All right, so that's I think I have covered everything in the folder structure. So let's go to the server and do some configuration. So I have the EWS package over here. On the server side, all I need to do is just run the configuration file, the setup configuration script. So all I need to do is just copy the SUT folder anywhere on the server machine. It doesn't have any dependency on what location you do copy it. You can copy it anywhere. And after copying, all you have to do is just run the script. What this will do is this will prepare your machine for running the test suite. It will create all the resources, all the users' mailboxes that it requires, and we have created only one setup script for entire test suite package. So you don't have to. So when you run one script, it will prepare. It will create resources for all the test suites in the package. It takes a little bit of time to create all the resources. So as you can see over here, it's going through. Yeah, over here it detects what Exchange server it has installed. So if it has to do some extra configuration, depending on the version of the product, it will detect things and do it accordingly. So over here, it's already started creating the users. I have run this script on this machine previously, so that's why it says the user already exists. But in case if user didn't exist, then it will go ahead and create the user. So these are all the resources that all our test suites are using in this particular package. So one thing you can notice over here is we name our resources so that they are very easy to understand which test suites are using those resources. So looks like the configuration on the server is already finished. So let's go to the client machine now. That's all you have to do on the server. Basically, just run the configuration script. On the client machine, it's similar, but client machine will require entire package. So I will copy everything that's in the package to this folder. So entire thing. Once the package is copied, all I have to do is first run the setup script for the client. So we'll wait for the copy to finish. So this client configuration script is a little bit interactive. It will ask you questions about your environment, what's the name of the server, what Exchange version you have installed over there, things like that. And according to your responses, it will go ahead and set those values in the configurations files. So you don't have to manually do the configuration. The goal is to make it simple. So it's asking me first what's the name of the system under test. Let me zoom in on that. So Okay, just a second. I know that the name of the server is EXHV5851. That's the NetBIOS name of the server. Oops, I typed it wrong, so I'll have to go to configuration file and manually adjust it later. The name of the domain name of the server, I know it is 5851 dom.xtest.microsoft.com. So it's asking me what transport I want to use. So right now I just want to go with HTTP. But in case if I wanted to run all test suites in HTTPS, I just need to enter 2 over here. It's asking me what's the server version that I have installed on the server. I have installed 2013 over there, so I'll input 3 over there. So after I've provided input, it's right now going through all the configuration files and setting those files with proper values. So I don't have to go and manually set those configuration values. Okay. One thing I'll need to do is go to the common PTF config and modify the value that I mistyped. So this is where it sets the value. I by mistake added A over there, but I now corrected it. So we now have the configuration done for the client as well. What we can do now is just pick one test suite and pick some test cases and run them. So I want to show you how easy it is to run these test cases. What I did was I rebuilt the solution so binaries are generated. In order to so in case if you don't see the list of test cases, this is the plain view. You load the solution. This is what you see. Over here you have a file called vsmdi. If you double click, this is the list of test cases that you have in this particular test suite. If you double click on this file, you'll see a pane on the left side that lists all the test cases that you have over here. So in order to run the test cases, all I have to do is just select them and right click and run. These test cases are independent. They do not have dependency on each other, so you can select in any order and any amount. It's not required to run all of them, or you can run it in any order and any amount. So I've just selected 3 of them. I will right click and run. So when you click on run, you see the in the bottom pane, it's already started running the test cases. It's showing me that the first one is in progress. I will see the status over here. While it is running, I also wanted to show you. So looks like it's already started passing. In case if you want to see the source code for the test case, that is also very simple. You just right click on the test case where you want to see the source code and click on open test. That will basically take you directly to the source code. Over here I want to show you how well documented these test suites are. Even if you are very new to a particular protocol test suite, you can go through the command and understand what it is doing. And also the TDS contains much more information than this. So if you want to understand more, go to the TDS document. Right, and so we ran the test cases over here. In case if you wanted to debug it, all you have to do is just go to the test case code, put a breakpoint there, and then instead of running the test case, just go and do the debug. So that will hit somewhere hit your breakpoint and let you trace line by line or function by function, whatever you want. All right, so that's all I had in the demo. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Is any plan to provide this test suites as an precompiled package that doesn't require the Visual Studio, whatever? Because, for example, we want to, as a man in the middle developments, we want to hand our QA team with a ready to run solution, and they don't have an access to our development tools at all.
Right. So, so right now we ship it as a source code, but if you want to
Repeat the question.
So right now it is as a source code, but we provide the batch scripts that you can run from the command prompt. It requires the binaries though. We do not ship the binaries along with the package, but all you need to do is just open the common solution, do a build, and that's all you have to do. So you will get the binaries, and then you can share those binaries with the QA team.
So if this is really important for you, we can consider doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Any other question? Oh. All right. Let's get back to the slides. All right. So next, let's look at the debugging and troubleshooting information. Basically, this section will tell you, in case if some test case fails, what are your options, what files you can explore to look at what basically failed. So when you run the test suite, basically there are some files which gets generated. These files help you find out if what was the failure. So when you run the test suite, a TRX log is generated. This is basically generated by MS Test. It's a Visual Studio file that you can open in Visual Studio and look at the result of the test run. I have more information about that later. Another file that gets generated is XML log. This is generated by the PTF, Protocol Test Framework. Our test suites contain lines which will write this XML log. We'll see more about that later as well. And another one is another one is HTML report. This basically contains information about the requirement coverage. So in case if you want to see how many requirements were verified, which of them could not be verified, which of them failed. So list of all those things will be included in the report. In case if you want to capture the traffic, you can use Network Monitor along with parsers, or Message Analyzer, or some other tool that you are comfortable with. So here is an example of the TRX log. Here looks like something failed. So on the bottom pane, when you open a TRX file in Visual Studio, you'll see that it will show you for entire test run, whatever passed and what failed. Looks like one test case failed out of 4 over here. If you double click on the failed test case, on the top pane, you'll see the details about the failure. Over here, in the error message section, you'll see what's the exact error, why it failed. And we take enough care to write what actually failed. So over here, you can see what was expected and what we actually got. That gives you information about what failed. And under the stack trace, error stack trace, you have the entire call stack where it failed, and you also have the line, the file of the source code along with its line number where things failed. So this is an example of XML log. So we write various kinds of logs in the various categories of log in the XML file, and what goes into XML log file is driven by the configuration file. So if you want to get enable or disable some kind of logs in the XML log, then you can go ahead and change the settings in the PTF config file. We'll see more on that one. This is an example of HTML report where it tells you for each test run, it generates an HTML report, something like this. It basically contains information about the requirements. So over here it says how many requirements were verified, how many could not be verified, and things like that. All right, so the next, let's dig into the implementation details, over here we'll see what SUT control adapter is and why we use them. Before that, I want to just give you some information about the project hierarchy. We have three, any test suite will have similar to this project structure, and we'll have three projects. One of them is common project, which contains source, which is common to all the test suites in the package. The next is adapter project, which contains source for the adapter, both protocol adapter and SUT control adapter, and test suite project. Test suite project contains the test cases source code. On the top, we have two files. The test settings files is basically the deployment setting file. It's created from Visual Studio, and you will never need to change that one. The VSMDI file is the list of test cases. You will double click on that one if you want to see the list of the test cases. This is a common configuration file that I showed in the demo. It contains settings which are common to all the test suites in the package. You modify setting over here, and all test suites will pick up that new setting. These are the protocol adapter interface and implementation. In case if this particular test suite didn't have the SUT control adapter, but if it had, then SUT control adapter source code will also exist in this particular project. Under the test suite project, we have the configuration files. There are three should make config files over here, which are very interesting. This is a new addition that we have done in the recent version. Basically, some of the open specification contains, like all the open specification contains some of the statements with should and may. These are basically optional behaviors. It's up to the implementer to choose how they want to behave. So using this should may PTF configs, you can basically enable or disable optional behavior. So if your implementation of the protocol does not implement something, then you can disable the verification for that optional behavior. We have two more PTF config files. PTF configs are basically an XML settings files. They are used by PTF, so that's why we have named it PTF config, but they are basically XML files. The deployment.ptf config contains settings related to this test suite itself. Like we have a common PTF config as well, but that houses all the settings which are common to all test suites, and the deployment.ptf config contains the local settings. And we also have another PTF config which does not contain deployment word. That's the PTF config which contains settings related to log files and adapter declarations. And we also have the source code for the test cases under the test suite project. All right, so here I wanted to mention the components of the test suite. A component test suite may contain test cases, protocol adapter, and SUT adapter. The SUT adapter is interesting because not all test suites will contain a SUT adapter. Here, just an example. Out of all 10 test suites in the RPC package, only 4 of them contains the SUT control adapter. So so you'll see SUT control adapter only when it is used and required. So what is SUT control adapter? As I said, when test case has to configure or interact with the server while running the test cases, outside the current protocol that's being tested, then we use the SUT control adapter. An example is, say we are testing OXO rule, which is about creation and deletion of rules. In order to activate the rule, we may need to send an email. And that sending an email part is not part of the OXO rule protocol, right? So in order to send an email, we use the SUT control adapter. Another example is if we are testing, say, OXC store, which is about logging onto mailbox or public folders. If we need to create a mailbox while running the test cases, that's also done by using the SUT control adapter. Now, SUT control adapter can be implemented in 3 ways: a PowerShell, manage, and interactive. We'll see more details about each of them in the next slides. But it's good that using the PTF config file, you can switch between their modes. So it's not a big change if you want to change between PowerShell and interactive or manage and interactive. PowerShell is where you, so we'll see about that. So here is an example of a PowerShell SUD control adapter. You have an interface method over here, send mail to recipient. We declare in the PTF config that we are implementing this SUD control adapter using the PowerShell, and we give the directory where we have the PowerShell script based. And here is where your implementation will go. So each method in the interface will have its own PowerShell script. So whenever test case calls this this interface method, the PTF will make sure that it executes this PowerShell script in order to do some tasks. So so this is how a PowerShell SUD control adapter is implemented. Here's an example of an interactive mode SUD control adapter. This is the same line where we, in the PTF config, we mentioned that this particular SUD control adapter is implemented using the interactive mode. This is interesting because over here you don't have to write any source code. Whenever the interface method will be called from the test case code, a dialog box will be popped, something similar to this one, and you will it will ask you to do something on the server manually and come back with the result. So if you are implementing the protocol on your own and you don't want to customize the test suites by writing code, then you can use this interactive mode to first test the test suites with your implementation. But as you can see, it contains the manual input, so you cannot automate that in the lab. So here's an example of protocol adapter. It's very simple. We always implement protocol adapter in .NET language C#. It's very basic, the interface and implementation language. So here you can see the method in the interface. Here is the implementation, and here is the PTF config entry, which mentions that we are implementing this protocol adapter using the managed code. And here is the class, the fully qualified name of the class that implements the protocol adapter. That's how PTF basically at runtime will use reflection to call these methods when an interface method is called. So here are the different approaches that we could use when we do the test suite development. One is traditional approach where we go and write the test case source code by hand. Another is MBT approach. I hope you attended the MBT session that was yesterday. The MBT approach uses, we basically design the model and then use Spec Explorer to generate the source code for the test cases. And we may also use the hybrid approach. So out of the 10 test suites in the RPC package, we use only 7. I think, yeah, 7 of them uses the traditional approach. 3 of them use the model-based test approach. And out of all the test suites in EWS, all of them use the traditional approach. So we have a mix of both the approaches. All right, that's all I had. Questions?
For earlier versions of Exchange, right?
Sorry?
Like loads, we have LoadSim, LoadGen for earlier versions of Exchange, right? Do you have similar tool available for Exchange 2K13?
I don't.
Do we have performance or scale tools for Exchange? No. We don't. These are just simply protocol validation tools. We're just validating the requests and responses from our synthetic client. There's an old LoadSim tool out there now, but it's not current.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Which protocols are covered? So it's only the basic RPC protocol over HTTP, or it's also includes the web services. It's
So yeah, I have the list of all the protocols over here.
So I believe there's, as Jigger's pulling the list up, we have 10 RPC protocols that we cover and about 10 EWS protocols, and that's the
These
list.
are the RPC
Yeah.
protocols that we have,
Yeah.
and these are the EWS protocols that we have.
Yeah, and we're constantly adding more to the package. Yeah, and transport's configurable.
I don't know if you answered that one. So these test suites, they are not going to replace LoadGen or LoadSim, right? They are not the replacement for LoadGen or LoadSim.
No.
It's complements them.
Well, it's a different purpose. LoadSim is to generate load, right? These are to validate the protocol's happening. So if we've got some middleware or server implementation of our protocols, validate that the protocol.
Oh, okay.
It's nothing to do with performance or scale.
Okay.
All right. And I also wanted to mention, in case if you are interested in running these test suites, then we can configure these test suites in your offices. So just let us know, and we will do the configuration, and we will be able to run these test suites while you are here. So you can go through a practice run, and we can help you. We have a big interop team over here throughout the week, which can and all of us can help you with any of the questions or something. So people, can you stand up, the interop team?